Welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at our first look at sedimentary rocks. And we'll see that sedimentary rocks are being made by small fragments that used to belong to other rocks. So rocks that had been weathered, either mechanically weathered or chemically weathered from other sources, and then transported by erosion to some place, usually by water. And it will be laid down normally in the bottom of a stream. And then as it's laid down, the sediment settles to the bottom of the water in layers and then is compacted and cemented together to form the sedimentary rock. So we're going to look at the different types. Today we're going to look at the detrital type of sedimentary rock, which is made out of these small pieces or fragments that have been broken away. And then we'll look at later the chemical sedimentary rock in the next lesson. Sedimentary rocks are rocks that used to be sediment, and sediment is small pieces of rock and debris that used to be other rocks. So it's basically like a recycling plan for rocks. So as rocks break down because of weathering, they're transported, usually by water, somewhere and then laid down. So most of the time you're going to find sedimentary rocks on what used to be the bottom of a stream. And it's laid down in layers. So the older layers would be on the bottom, and then the middle layers, and then the younger layers would be laid down on the top. And so after it's transported and settles as sediment, it's still not rocks, it's just sediment. It's just gravel or sand or silt or mud or clay. Then it needs to be lithified. And the word lithified comes from the word stone. So lithos in Greek is stone. So it becomes stone when it's cemented. So you're going to have something that runs in between the little tiny sediment pieces and then cements it together. So it's compacted usually by pressure of the overriding rock layers and then cemented by usually water that has some chemicals in it that will adhere to the pieces and lithify them or turn them into rock. So sedimentary rocks really only are about 5% of the rocks. Remember that most of the rocks on Earth are igneous rocks. Almost 90% are silicates, and so they're igneous. And you can have igneous rocks that then break into sediments and then form sediments, okay? So you can make sedimentary rocks out of, we talked about the rock cycle, but you're going to see that 75% of all the continent rock, so the rocks that we actually would see, 75%, not 90% of the Earth's crust, which often are at the bottom of mountains and the bottom of oceans that we never actually look at, 75% of all of the continental rock that we can see, that sticks out of the edge of a mountain, are going to be sedimentary rocks. So if you look at a strip mine, or if you look at the side of the highway, almost all of those rocks are sedimentary rocks. And you can see the layers and layers and layers of these rocks as you see the side of a highway where it's been cut to put the highway there. Now there's two types of sedimentary rocks. You've got basically the same as the two types of weathering that we've already looked at. You have detrial sedimentary rocks, and detrius is the gravel and the sand and the dirt at the bottom of a hill. That's called detrius. So anything that settles or falls off and falls to the bottom is called detrius. So these are little particles that used to be other rocks. So these are weathered other rocks. So that's one type of sedimentary rock. And then the second type is chemical rocks. So these are rocks that were changed usually by acids. So acids in the water, and it breaks down the rocks into smaller pieces. Then those pieces settle out of the water and become new rocks. Okay, so today we're going to look at the detrial sedimentary rocks first. Okay. So detrius is all kinds of different minerals and different rock fragments, because if you can imagine an entire mountain, all the different rocks that might be sticking out of that mountain that might be breaking apart by weathering, all of it falls to the bottom and all of it's mixed together, and they're all different sizes. So you have big particles and small particles, and all of them are put together. So the sedimentary rocks, really the only way you can classify it is to say what's in it. What's in it and what's it look like. So what's in it will depend upon the rocks that were broken down, that then were transported by usually water away from a hill and then down a stream and then settles down. Okay, so you're going to have most of them are going to be very small. Okay, usually you can have rocks made out of huge other rocks, like big, grapefruit sized rocks can be cemented into other rocks, but normally they're small. And the smaller, the easier it is to transport. So like clay that could mix in the water and basically just be turbid is what it's called, where you can't see the water's not clear. So if you look at a normal West Virginia river and you can't really see to the bottom of it, because it's got so much sediment in it, that's holding on to that sediment. A lot of it's clay, and the clay goes to the bottom of the rivers. Also quartz, which is sand in the form of sand, quartz broken down will become sand. It is transported usually by the water, and it lays down. So you're going to see that it's how big these clastic texture. Clastic just is a rock made up of other rocks. So you just have little rocks that are glued together into a big rock. That's a clastic. So how big were these rocks? Okay, so if they're rounded, which meant that they were underwater, they're being tumbled by a stream. The rounded ones are called conglomerate. Okay, so a conglomeration is just a big pile of stuff that's put together. So a conglomerate rock, really, I think of it as a piece of concrete, but it's natural concrete, where all the different parts were glued together, and you're going to have little rocks in it, and the rounded rocks are called conglomerate. If they are angular pieces, which never made it from a river, okay, so they were never tumbled in a river or a stream, that's called breccia. So the breccia is sharp angled pieces, and the conglomerate is rounded pieces. And so those are the largest type of sedimentary rocks. The next one would be sand. So sand by itself is going to be a sandstone, okay, and that's what it's sandstone. So sand is just layers and layers of sand that's compacted and then cemented, and this is sandstone. So you have huge mountains of sandstone in West Virginia, okay. Arcos has got some other stuff embedded in it, but lots and lots. It's mainly sand. If you have a particle smaller than sand, then that's called silt. Okay, so really, really fine. Now this would be carried easily by the water, and siltstone is just like sandstone, only it's not made up in particles big enough like sand, so when you feel it, it's much smoother. Okay, if you have really fine material, then it's not silt, it's clay. Okay, and clay is called shale, and just like a pottery can take clay and turn it into a cup, well, shale is usually in sheets, and so you can have sheets of this clay that hardens, and then you can have layers. It makes beautiful waterfalls where you comes down a hillside and it's all shale, and it comes down, and you can end up with just really cool waterfalls. There's one in Somersville that's just amazing. Mudstone is also called the same thing because it's clay is mud. So mud is a little more than just clay because it's got dirt, different types of dirt in it. But mudstone is another small particle, so shale or mudstone.